reflecting on your journey of self-healing and fitness, what pivotal moment or realization sparked your passion to go on a mission? And what is your vision?
Wow, what a beautiful question. Well, I'll start with my mission. So, my mission is absolutely to bring information around self-healing and especially quote unquote the secrets of self-healing to as many humans as possible. Um, and when I say quote unquote, I just mean a lot of that information is ancient and yet we have either forgotten or it's been withheld from us, especially women. So that's my mission, is to just help inform, and my mission and my vision exactly is just a place where people feel empowered to do something immediately to support themselves. Just take that first step, past the panic and past the worry, and be like, okay, my body is able to heal. What do I need? So that's my mission. And I don't know if there was so much a specific moment where I said, okay, I'm gonna get out there and do this, because I've been interested in healing my whole life. I have been sort of naturally been the person in high school that had the soccer ball in my backpack, and I was like, let's not sit around, let's kick the soccer ball. So I was very movement oriented anyways, and just sort of naturally so one thing sort of led to the next. And then I think one day in my 20s, one of my friends said, will you lead yoga at my wedding? And I was like, sure, because I had been a student for a long time and I wasn't even a teacher yet, right? But it was wonderful. And I just saw it as sort of a natural, easy thing that I enjoyed sharing. But if there was like a moment, I think that got me a bit more kickstarted was when I was teaching mom and baby dance. So the moms wear the babies in a baby carrier, and we're all doing Latin dance together. And I was very pregnant at the time. And I overheard their conversation about their birth trauma and like really heavy stuff, actually, like babies almost dying and just really traumatic things happening. And one of them turned around very frustrated and said, oh, nobody ever has a positive birth story whatsoever. It's so not fair. So I remember like biting my tongue because I did, but I would never have shared it in that context because I felt that would be so inappropriate, right? But I remember thinking, no, this is messed up. That in the discussions I'm always hearing, especially with women that were a bit younger than me, that they can't even find sort of positive, or if you will, empowered, non-completely traumatic birth stories. So that was what kind of kickstarted me to share my own. And that's part of the healing work that I do, is or one area where I focus is helping moms, especially that are pregnant, or couples that are pregnant, to bring babies into the world in a more natural, empowered way. So yeah, I think that would be the one pivotal moment I can think of.
That's so beautiful. And you are one of the rare people who actually goes into that field and finds the courage to guide other people through these highly emotional processes, right? And times and moments where like, really both partners have to work really well together to create healthy spaces for the baby to actually come into this world and be welcomed into this world in a joyful way, in a beautiful and welcoming way, and not
Yeah.
in a traumatic way. Again, I can so relate. I had two traumatic births myself, and I know that a lot of people have. Like you said, so many people believe that there's just no other way, so we just take it as it is, and we will not even start striving for anything healthy or beautiful. It's too hard, right? And let's talk more about the ways how you actually incorporate that into your work and how you actually achieve that. And beyond the physical and energetic aspects, how does your work benefit specifically those who struggle with deep-seated stress or trauma? Let's take a mother, for example, who may be pregnant right now and who is experiencing or has experienced deep-seated stress and trauma. How can this woman now, if she decides to turn that around to get over her own trauma, how can she make that happen so that her child actually is born into a beautiful, healthy world?
It's such a beautiful question. Um, so, well, how can you turn it around? It's not an easy thing, right? But I think first of all, like the 90% of the work is just in the awareness that there's something here it should be turned around and I'd like to, and making just that small choice and believing that it matters even if you're willing to take one step forward. I think it's really helpful for that mom, let's say, or anybody that's faced chronic stress and especially fear about their own health or their own body, to feel seen and to feel heard and to feel like it's not such a big deal. Because of course this is a really, really big deal, but to feel like, okay, I'm normal too. Most people have these kind of feelings. Most people go through some event emotionally or physically where they're scared, where they're stressed. Most people face ongoing stress at some points in their life. So I think that message should land loud and clear with that someone perfectly, or perfectly easily, hopefully. And then how can you turn it around in one breath at a time? So I'm a massive breathwork advocate. And when I worked with my yoga teacher, so I've had a few yoga teachers that have stayed with me, like a one-on-one relationship. I would say a very modern day guru shisha type relationship. But modern, but definitely worked one-on-one for a couple of years together. And it was so much about breath work and mindset and working with the inside first to elicit change on the outside. So I really learned, and I still experience every day, how just 5 minutes of stilling yourself, of slowing your breath, of calming your system down can not only reduce your stress, but it can just shift everything around you really quickly and cumulatively. But even if you don't do it every day, just 5 minutes still makes quite a big difference. So yeah, so I think those two things, I think just taking a small step and then hopefully finding some community or something where you feel seen.
I find it so powerful what you say, because I would go in the same direction to solve any kind of trauma, stress related problem. I would really start with the breathing as well. As a singer, I've come across this concept very early in my life, and I'm very grateful for that I had such an amazing choir teacher who was really, really good at teaching breath work or breathing techniques specifically for singing, which is a little bit different for yoga and for fitness, and is an extension of how you can actually use your body with the tools that your body already has. I find that very important because many people, when they have trauma, stress, anxiety, they always think that they need some tools or medications outside of their bodies, that the solution is outside of their bodies. And I think this is a very modern way of thinking, or a very Western way of thinking, I would say, where you seek outside solutions when the true healing can only take place within yourself, because you don't want to heal the outside world. So why are you seeking the outside world solutions and tools? You need to start with the tools that God, nature, whatever you want to call it, gave you on purpose, for a very specific purpose and function. And breathing is tremendous. What you can heal with breathing alone, you can write books, I'm sure, about that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's incredibly important that we start with how we feel. And breathing, I feel, is giving us exactly that. It gives us the
Mhm.
opportunity to truly connect with our inner self, to calm ourselves. Quite literally and medically, your heart rate goes down when you breathe slowly, when you calm yourself, when you actually actively force yourself to breathe slower, right? If you are in an anxiety attack, or if you are in a traumatic situation and you start breathing fast, you can
Mhm.
notice that, be aware of that, and bring yourself down. You have that power. Nobody is really here to control you unless you let the other person control you. You have all the tools in your toolbox to actually control how your life will look like.
Very well said. We are very on the same page with this. I love how you just said, you're not trying to fix the outside world, you're trying to fix the inside world. So why are you looking to the outside? That, I should make a post about that. That sums it up.
Could you share your perspective on the intersection of both physical fitness, which you also teach, and inner wellness, and why you believe
Mhm.
it's essential for people actually seeking holistic self care and not just um, obsessive fitness, for example? I see that with younger women nowadays so much that they want to lift weights and all that stuff. I am personally not a big fan of that, especially if the woman strives to have kids in the future. I see a problem here because it's not holistic and it's not tailored to her feminine body. She cannot deny that. I would love to know your take on that.
Okay, well, I'll start with the basics. I am so passionate about this because um I've always been someone that just naturally felt like I need to move more. I remember being in grade, what, 8? And I was walking to him from school, and I remember thinking, that's not enough exercise. I'm 14. I should be getting more exercise than this, before, and then I joined some sports teams. Um, so I've always just sort of seen it as like just we're mammals, we're animals, we're designed to move. It's not natural if you don't. And my whole jam and my whole passion is to help people move into meditation, quite literally. So because we are really going through the next smoking, which is the sitting disease, and I work from home too, maybe you do too, it's
Yeah.
upon all of us. You go from sitting at your desk and your keyboard or your phone to the car, to watching, your kids maybe play sports, to sitting at some watching TV at night, right? So it's really an issue. So I find for myself and for my students or my clients that not only are they facing that meditation and breath work is boring, but your body does not want to do that when you've already been sitting the whole day or the last week or the last month. So we really want to nourish and almost treat the body that's this beautiful kind of alive, maybe like even like a toddler, who just needs to go, and you need to let it go and you need to let it move and get the kinks out. And whether that's yoga or that's dance or that's swimming or gardening, I don't care. But the funner the better. And then once we've done the movement, it's really only then most of the time that we can really sink and ease more easily relax into breath work and meditation. And I know not always. I mean, sometimes if you've already been literally rushing around the whole day and you're going crazy, yes, that's good to automatically go and do your meditation then. But a lot of people, it's the opposite, and they have just sort of been sitting a lot, and um or maybe just doing like a lot of I'll say not unconscious movement, but kind of like what you were saying, like very outwardly focused movement, like say weight training, or um even like group sports, like something where your mind is sort of not in your body. So that's where some focused movement can help, so that you kind of come back, you nourish your body, you give it what it wants, and then we more easily slide into meditation and breath work, and be able to work with the inner. So that's really like something that I'm very, very passionate about. So I never want to change the movement that people are already doing. I just want to kind of give them a dessert piece at the end, and
Mm.
teach them that that's the ideal time, spot, and place to slide into your inner work, even if it's just say for 5 minutes at the end of your Zumba class. Um, and I do agree, like everybody likes their own thing. Some people like weightlifting, whatever. Um, what I think about the whole weightlifting thing, for example, is the more mindful you become, the more you fall in love with yourself, the more you'll do naturally what feels good. And maybe for you, that is the right thing. Maybe you'll be like, oh, maybe it's not, right? So when you start adding a little bit of inner work to balance out the outer work, you will sort of naturally come into a bit more of alignment, I think, in what I've seen and experienced myself. So I wouldn't necessarily be worried about it, except that's all the person is doing. Well, if that's all they're doing and it's with no inward practice, they might be a little bit out of balance. So what is the goal there? I would maybe want to do a bit of exploring if that person were working with me one-on-one. you know if I see women doing that otherwise in the gym, I'm like, you go girl, at least you're moving.
That's true. And it looks like I'm your perfect client because I do sit a lot working at home, working on my businesses. And like, of course, going outside, I purposely don't use a car. I do everything by foot to have
Excellent.
that kind of exercise or training. But I know it's not enough. I can feel it in my body, especially because I'm moving towards the 40 now. And I can feel how old the body really becomes and how sagging, I would say, it feels when you don't exercise. So I do observe myself and see that I do more exercises when I'm sitting a lot because I want to stay in shape. I want to keep that chi flowing, I don't want to block it anywhere.
Yeah.
And I have actually a question because when I imagine you training your clients and doing certain movements with them, and I love the concept that you first move with them, like high energy and go all out, and like the juices need to flow in the body before you calm down. I particularly
Mm.
love that
Mm.
specific process because that's exactly what I would need because I love
Mm.
both, right? I love the high energy, the dancing part, but I also love the meditation part to calm yourself down because I'm naturally a calm
Yeah.
person. I don't need too much stress or energy or what have you, right? Only to like stay with the juices flowing. What is written Reiki and isn't the same as energy and chakra work? And what does chakra work really look like?
Thank you. That's a beautiful question. So written Reiki is something that I came up with, or rather came through me. And a little bit of the story behind that is I had my levels 1, 2, and 3 qualifications. Like I went through the courses about, I'm not thinking, 11, 12, 13 years ago, something like that, before having children. And when you get attuned in Reiki, they use the ancient symbols and it's called an attunement, sort of bring them forward to you, like you're allowed to use them now, kind of thing. But mine were already floating above my head, apparently. And I didn't know that I was somewhat clairvoyant before my training because like my teacher, who's like a very open third eye, was telling me certain things, but then she would be like, what do you see, or what do you feel, or what do you experience? And I would tell her things about her own life. So she was like, whoa. And she kept asking me to work on her all the time. So I was still thinking, just my imagination. I have a vivid imagination, and it's just that. And then I'd also heard that some people, like, I never wanted to be accused of being a charlatan, right? So some people can come across as being, we'll say, clairvoyant or able to read energy because they're just extremely empathetic combined with really good guessing. So the reason I'm telling the backstory is that was like 13 years ago. And I started this little business called The Written Ray, being a bit of an introvert. And then I was afraid to share it for all these years because I was still almost cannot convince myself, like I almost needed to gather all this evidence and get a lot of feedback from people informally that it was real, that it made a difference, that it helped. And so when I do it most comfortably, I do Reiki through writing. So, which means that I get permission from you to tap into your higher self. I spend 1 or 2 hours connected and I write the whole time. So I just write out any messages that are coming through. And I don't usually remember what I write. And once I delete it, I don't really, it's just sort of, I'm very like in a meditative zone. And I combine in there a reading of each person's chakra, just whatever's sort of coming through me. And I add in music and just sort of is literally receiving like a 3-page session that you get to sort of work through on your own. And why it's kind of beautiful, especially if you're someone that doesn't necessarily have the time to do like 2 hours one-on-one, is you can take it to any kind of quiet space and work through it, and then you can revisit it as often as you want to, right? So I usually tell people to kind of sit and like get a cup of tea and get a blanket where they won't be disturbed, go out in nature somewhere, and then you read through it. And it is different than seeing a recording of someone talking to you because of the power of the written word. And I don't know a better way to explain it, but the written word itself has its own vibration. And when you're reading, the way certain things will land is different than if I'm speaking to you. But when I'm writing, I'm also the most clear because I'm not like, even I'm showing up on camera right now, there's that little edge of nervousness, or there's that little edge of, do I look okay? You know, so when I'm writing, none of that's there. I'm like in the just a free flow. So that's written Reiki, and it's just a term that I coined. The difference between that and chakra work can be a lot of things. So every human has the primary chakra centers. We have 7, really, we have 9. And then you have a whole bunch of other small ones, but that could be anything from like hands-on Reiki to like there's just a lot of modalities that like there's therapeutic touch, there's chanting certain songs for certain areas of the body. Our indigenous people have been singing and chanting to chakras for millennia, right? This is not even something that belongs to yoga or Tibet or anything. I know our indigenous elders in Canada, when they're like hoi hoi hoi, like they're actually singing to an area of your body to help get rid of illness. So it's known in indigenous traditions all around the world, and so chakra work can be a lot of things. So for me, what I do with somebody is I, either through writing, as I said, or verbally, I just sort of let them know what's going on in that area when I do a scan. And I always set an intention, one, that I have permission, and 2, that it's delivered in a kind of playful, light, easy, digestible way for the other person, because we're all at different levels of I guess spiritual growth, or we're all different points of healing, we're all different points of awareness. So the language and the tone that will come through will be what that person sort of needs or relates to. So I hope that answers the question about the difference. But the easiest way for me to show you, Ella, is for you to try.
I will love
So
that.
I would love to try it on you. Okay. And I just love saying that. Like I said, I can be a little bit introverted, so sometimes it's just easier for me to say, let me show you. Okay, so you've got your feet on the floor, perhaps. I'm
Mm-hmm.
going to just ask you to sit for a moment, relax your shoulders, bring your palms up so we're in receptive mode. Yeah, put them on your lap, and we'll close the eyes and breathe into the stomach. And exhale. Fully, and breathe into the stomach. Anybody watching can do this too, and exhale. And one more time, breathe in to the stomach with me. And exhale. And before you open your eyes, just stay in that zone for a few more seconds. Do I have permission to tap into your higher self?
Yes.
I'm going to take a look. Scan. Beautiful. So you're totally welcome to open your eyes. It's kind of fun because I don't usually do it live, but I can get a real clear picture. So I see a lot of energy moving upwards, almost like you're like, whoa, like a hula hoop. What's going on? And the first zone that comes to my attention is Anahata, so the heart chakra. Is the most visible, quite big. You've got a beautiful emerald green with white. And what I'm seeing is that it's a place that you really want to keep expanding out through the heart and welcoming more people into that sphere. you might actually like hula hooping, as I really see it almost like a hula hoop. That's kind of fun. And then the next that's the most prominent would be definitely this one here. We need a bit more grounding. So the smaller one, I'll say, because you want to try and keep them all about the same size, although depending on where you're at the day, your chakras will, your energy centers will be bigger or smaller. But the root chakra is a little itty bitty. And the root chakra we want to be really big and expanded, so you feel like a big, heavy elephant on the ground. So that would make sense if you are somebody that's, like you said earlier, maybe sitting a lot of the time and you have that desire to move and really stomp your feet and really, really get grounded. So that's something maybe you could do later and just really get out and get some tribal energy going on. And on the, you're in Italy, right? So if you can get on the actual earth, even better. And that will be really, really helpful. So now I'm seeing you wanting, because now I'm seeing the energy go back down, because instead of the energy always going up to like cerebrally, we want to push it back down into the earth, push it back down into the earth, push it back down to the earth, because you will always be a very, very intellectual person. So we want to really make sure that that's grounded, like, and you'll feel naturally more secure and comfortable and confident. And so we'll do one more. So the next one that's coming is really the third eye chakra. And so classically this one would be indigo or like a navy blue. And it's interesting with you, I see quite a bit of white. Almost like you're trying to figure this out. Like try to figure this out, like so logically, like I would too, like what is the difference between my imagination and having an open third eye, and what are the limitations here? And so there's really an intellectual conversation going on. So if you were to imagine with your eyes closed that you had an eye on the inside, and you can even go like this right now, you can give it a press, you can give it a
Mm-hmm.
push.
Now?
If you were just imagine that you have an eye in there that kind of
Mm-hmm.
flicks open. Yeah. Whoa, there you go. So that's more what it is. It's almost like you've opened up the movie screen curtains. And
Mm-hmm.
it's more of a sense of allowing than understanding. To activate our third eye, we just allow the images or the sensations or the reminders to come in, then being able to understand it, or it's not intellectual. It's about eventually things will come more and more, and you just with practice and time learn to trust it. So, but I think that you have a very active third eye, and I think that what's the message here? Like spiritually, you're just getting started. Like just getting started. Um and to keep it, yeah, and to definitely just keep it playful and fun. There's nothing to fear. There's nothing to fear here. There's nothing spooky here. There's nothing to fear here. The more information you have, the bigger the impact you'll be able to make on the world, or in the world, on the world and in the world. So those are the three first ones that came to me. So
This is so interesting because those three chakras are the most prominent or the most dominant that I deal with every day. Like when we start with the root chakra, as I said, this is an imbalance that I see right now. And I want to balance. There's a big urge for me to balance it, especially this year, because I have seen my health going down gradually, the last year, especially because I have been working a lot and I want to balance that because, well, you want to be a role model, right? For your
right.
kids and everything. And the heart chakra is also something that I have more practice now, ever since I have my business. Before that, I had a big and open heart chakra, but I was afraid to kind of show it and to be myself because I am naturally very open. I give love. I want to heal and to serve and to be there for other people. That's the natural state of my being. But because of certain things that I've experienced in life, it kind of
Mhm.
taught me, I thought I had to guard it really heavily, right? And so I kind of went on a journey the past years of opening up this space. And this is so important to me that I actually succeeded, because I could have gone another way. And you mentioned fear as the last one, the mental space. It was one of the hardest chakras for me to deal with, especially in my youth, in my childhood, and in my teens. And it's funny that you mentioned it, because I was very cerebral. I tried to understand every single thing on this earth
Mhm,
because I wanted to feel safe,
mhm.
because I never felt safe. And it's
Mm,
so good. It almost brings me to tears because you say there's nothing to fear here. Like, the more you open up, the more you give of what you have to give, the more impact you can have in the world. It's exactly what I am thinking about on a daily basis. How can I stop overthinking this? And how can I just give without having the fear that I will be unsafe in whatever I'm doing?
this is very powerful. Thank you for that feedback. So that really aligns with what I'm getting. So, and it makes so much sense. So this kind of like almost like it's just a thin white, say, hula hoop. It's as easy as taking it down, just stepping out of it. And I'll also add that with the fear, I don't remember, I don't know what your relationship is with your mother. We've never talked about it or if she's still available, but don't forget you have another one who is always, always, always available. And so, and there's nothing like woo woo about it. Go spend time with the earth. Go spend time with your earth mother. Go literally, like you can connect your navel center, your actual umbilical cord. You have nerve endings around the belly to the earth, and it makes you feel very secure and grounded right away, obviously with the bare feet. And just going in there to that place of sanctuary, like just being somewhere in nature or sitting beside a plant in your house, doesn't matter. Or like in the shower, will help with this feeling of safety. And it, so these are just very simple, basic things, but for you, it will help you feel very, very safe, because I'm also extremely intellectual. And absolutely, when we understand things and they kind of make sense, then we feel safe. But you are safely past that now. You are safely past that. And yeah, the more information you're able to start to pick up, so intellectually and spiritually, again, yeah, your impact to kind of triple. So I'm glad
It's
that
so
landed.
funny. Last year, actually, before um, I went on a different journey with my business that I was very unsure about, um, I caught myself scrolling through TikTok, like I assume like almost everyone does nowadays.
Yeah.
And I kind of noticed that I was scrolling till it was 2 at night, 3 at night, and I noticed, why the hell am I scrolling like a crazy one? What am I looking for? And I noticed that I was really looking for something. I was not doing that to distract myself or because I was stressed or anything. I was looking for something.
Mm.
And it was really interesting that I actually stopped scrolling when I saw a woman, fairly young, I would say 20 to 25, I would suggest, very bright, round blue eyes,
Yeah.
blonde hair. She looked like an angel. And the way
Mm.
she was talking about me, right? She was talking about me. The ways how she was a psychic reader or tarot card reader or something. I
Something.
instantly noticed that, and I normally am not a big believer of that, though I know there are psychic people, as I do have the tendency to see those things myself. I keep
Mhm.
myself in the intellectual space, as you just said, to keep to brainwash myself that I will be safer whenever I stay in that space, because that's explainable, right? Anyway, she started talking about me every day. Whenever I was scrolling TikTok, normally I never see the people again, even if I subscribe. I don't know why that happens on TikTok. They need to kind of check their algorithm, because I want to see those people, but it never happens. But with this lady, I was seeing her every day when I was scrolling.
Wow.
and she was speaking about me. There was not one video that was not accurately about me.
So
And I
she's
was
one of your
like, oh my God, like either she is really good at knowing her avatar because she's a business, right? She needs to be top notch in her skills, which I applaud her for, right? There's no shame in having a business and earning money. Um,
people.
or she was really attuned to whoever was watching before she was recording the video. She had an idea of who she wanted to talk to. Like that was an incredible piece of video to understand for me. But then again, what she was saying was so incredibly beautiful that I wanted to believe in it. She said, 2024 will be your year. You will explode in ways that you have been so scared about. Showing
Mm,
up, being yourself, and building things of immeasurable sizes that people will think you are crazy, right? This is incredible what you will create. And I was like, yes, that's true, but I'm still
yeah,
scared and I don't know where to
of
go,
course,
what to
of
decide,
course.
right? I was at the point of crossroads, so to speak. And it's so funny that I meet you and you tell me the same things. Like, thank you, universe.
You know, it's very possible that one of your, we'll say, someone on your team was likely steering you in that, steering you in that direction. Um, I listen, I hear you on so many levels. The last couple of years, I've quote unquote been coming out of the spiritual closet. And like I said earlier, it took me over 10 years to really share my business. I mean, I did a little bit of promo at the beginning, and then I got maybe the feedback I got was like, I don't know, I didn't feel super confident in it. So I was just afraid of everything, and that exactly that it wasn't intellectual. I mean, I'm a policy analyst, right? I'm a geographer, like all these things. I'm an academic. And so, you know, you don't want people to literally, like you said, think you're nuts. But I mean, I also think that, you know, this wild rebellious woman, she gets to be a little bit crazy. And you know, I am more at the point now, well, if you think that, oh well, but it doesn't make it like any less true for me. And if your journey reflects mine at all, what happens is eventually you start to see so many little synchronicities or quote unquote coincidences, or so many things starting to line up, that it's almost impossible you don't have a spirit team or spiritual support or whatever you want to call it, you know what I mean? And so I've been going through that tremendously in the last 2 3 years, like one baby toe at a time, coming out of the spiritual closet, you know. And it is a really big expansion, and it is a really fun, empowering time, and it is scary as hell.
Oh,
But
yeah.
I can connect you with lots of communities that can help.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Yeah,
And what I
yeah.
actually did after I have seen her every day for a couple of weeks, I decided to delete TikTok because in the end, like my fear got over me and I thought this is just distraction. I have to
Mm,
stay on my road and I have to do what I have planned and nothing else should distract me, right? This intellectual,
mm,
my father was speaking through
mm,
my brain,
mm,
right? And you mentioned the mother. I would love to also go into that. Um, and then actually what happened was one day I just woke up and I knew where to go. And it was the direction that the woman suggested. Like she opened up a part in me that I buried somehow, that I forgot, that I thought I could not let out because it was not safe, it was not the right direction, it is not what gurus would suggest or tell you to do, right? When it comes to business, how you lead your business and etc. And I
yeah.
started a YouTube channel about personal style, holistic personal style, and it
Mm,
completely blew up. And I
mm,
thought, wow, I never thought that I could trust my intuition.
mhm,
I was always going against my intuition. Again, this
mhm,
intellect would be always in the way.
mhm.
And
Yeah,
your parents will always kind of talk through you. And my father is a highly intellectual
my father too.
person. like a doctor, astrophysicist, and he is in his brain. There is almost no heart, right? It doesn't mean he's heartless or anything,
I
but
know
he
what you
is
mean. Yeah.
very intellectual, right? And my mother
Right.
is the opposite, artistic, music, art, painting, and all of that, right? And I never let that, and I never allowed that because he stayed in his job and my mom couldn't. And she was
Mm.
like just stay at home mom. So I think subconsciously, and I think that happens to a lot of people, subconsciously, I told myself, you cannot be an artist, you cannot be a musician, you will never earn money with that, so stay out of it, right? And that really almost broke me down.
This is the totality of a modern woman, right? And by the way, anybody that says just a stay-at-home mom, I mean, I have 3 kids and I took 5 or 6 years leave to stay with them and raise them and breastfeed them and all the things. And wow, it is a hell of a lot harder than going to an office every day. By the way,
It
there's no
is.
scheduled breaks, there's no predictability, like all the things, right? So you know, I feel that my heart is open to your mom and her experience, and I think that all of us women in our generation sort of are somewhat caught in the middle. You know, we want to be, and we're raised to be, you know, educated and doing the exact same things as men and da 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 da. But then we do have these sort of natural instincts coming forward to use our intuition, maybe be with our kids, maybe birth in a more natural way, maybe make our businesses a bit more creative. I love that you use the word holistic. And for sure, the current sort of model in society that we're following is very like we'll say a bit more in the masculine, right? And I do think there's a massive movement coming in to bring back the feminine energy, which is intuitive, creative. It's messy. It's meant to be. It's go with the flow. It's coming up with like juicy ideas, and why not try that? And why not try this? And so, you know, I think we need to have a mix, right? Each human being needs to have a bit of a mix. And so I think it's beautiful that you have found a fun way, like with your channel. You know, it's extremely useful and practical, which is male and then it's also like fun and feminine and flirty and creative, and we get to look more beautiful through the work that you're doing, right? So it really kind of, to me, supports both. So it's fantastic.
What I would like to add to what you just said is that my feeling is when we follow our intuition and we allow that to happen as a part of our feminine journey, we will stumble upon the right way, the right
Mhm.
path, especially when we are doing business.
Mhm.
And I know you are doing a lot of different things in your business. And one of the things that I find most remarkable, because of my personal experience, is home birth. And I would
Mm.
like to go more into that topic of how you came to that concept and what your biggest lesson is so far.
Sure. Well, I'll try not to get emotional along the way. Um,
Feel free to do
so
so.
yeah, happens, right? We're human, we cry. Um, so I was raised in a climate, and again, this is not to point fingers at anybody. I think this is the general climate of I won't even say fear around birth. I will say complete unresolved traumatic panic. All right, that's what I'll call it. In when my great grandmother, my grandmother's mother, and her own grandmother, so her mother and also the man that her mother married mother were local midwives, not far from where I am here in Ontario, Canada. And my grandmother remembers getting up at like, 2 in the morning or whatever when she was 10 years old, and her mother would say, go get my black bag. And they'd go up the road and help the lady, whoever it was giving birth, right? Everybody was born at home. There was not a hospital nearby at the time. It was still fashionable to give birth at home. And the word midwife was never even used. What happened back then was my great grandmother was one of those, few women that I guess her parents were modern, shipped her from Manitoba to Ontario so she could become a nurse. So she worked as a nurse. And then, of course, if you get married, in the early 1900s, you lose your status. You're not allowed to work anymore. Can you imagine? So she just kind of worked informally. So anyways, so that was how she was born. And then by the time my grandmother gave birth, I don't know when that was, sometime after World War II, they would, I think it was chloroform anyways, they would just knock the woman out and forcibly whatever remove the baby from the womb. And we all know the story. So it was very fashionable for a while. So they just put you to sleep so you don't experience anything. We're not sure what happens in the process. So with my grandmother's first baby, unfortunately, he was full term and a beautiful big boy, and he was born, and there was something sketchy happened. He was maybe not given the support he needed to breathe. So the nurses say, we don't know, I wasn't there. And he unfortunately passed not long afterwards. And the nurses told my grandmother that they felt there was a little bit of misconduct, but they couldn't say anything because they would get fired. So lots of juicy trauma. And so this kind of gets passed down through the bloodlines, right? And my mom's first birth, she told me that they kind of set her up in the room and gave her an epidural, and without like really asking, and the woman beside her is smoking so many cigarettes that my mom can hardly breathe in the room. And the doctor leaves her and says, I'll be back in a little while. And she thought to herself, I'm going to die. Like, she actually was in labor thinking, I'm probably going to die. Like, so I heard these stories plus modern media. Have you ever seen the old Star Trek or whatever? Women are screaming and there's blood everywhere. It's just like, ah. So I'm thinking to myself, there's got to be a better way, right? There's got to be a better way. So here I am, around 30 years old, whatever, and I'm excited to be pregnant for the first time, but I'm like, oh my God, like, what's going to happen to my body? What's going to happen to my vagina? What's going to happen, like, in general, right? With so much fear. And I feel like people don't necessarily talk about that aspect a lot because they don't want to jinx themselves. So like, okay, I'm going to think positive, and I'm just going to let it be okay at the end. I'm going to trust the process. So, but because by then, thank goddess, I had been in really, especially then, a really sort of, I'll say, strict or routine system of yoga and breath work and meditation. And I was doing an hour a day at that point. I kind of sort of knew better, and I went, no, 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 we're doing this natural. And I had one appointment with an OB-GYN, and I was like, that's it. Where do I find midwives? Because there was still the intellectual part of me for sure that was like, that's a little bit too woo-woo, or is midwifery safe? I would never in a million years have thought I would have a baby at home. That was like this crazy hippie woman out in the States somewhere did that once or twice because she, like, was crazy. But I never thought that would be me, right? But again, the difference was just so massive. Like, even in the appointment time, right? An OB-GYN is kind of like in and out, 15 minutes. They're really busy. You don't get that one-on-one. And then you go to your first midwife appointment, and luckily here in my country, it's paid for. They take like an hour and a half, and you can bring people, and you bring your kids, you sitting on a couch, they share their own stories with you. You instantly, anyways, I felt more that it was more relatable, and that I was going to be empowered. And they introduced themselves, at least in my situation, as an advocate, not just a healthcare practitioner. So everything is my choice. Do I want this test? Do I want that? What is it for? Am I comfortable? Like, everything is my choice. So you're not just kind of like a number in the system. So for a little scaredy cat like me, that seemed perfect. And then I flirted with the home birth idea. At first I was like, no way. But then you tour the hospitals, and I'm like, oh boy. And getting ready for birth, I knew that it's basically like, say, going for a poop. Okay. Like, where are you going to feel comfortable doing this? Where, because the cervix is a sphincter, right? So for it to relax, the woman has to be relaxed. And thank God I had, did enough reading. I realized this. As I looked at the environments that were set up institutionally, I'm like, I am way too sensitive to relax there. It's impossible. And especially because the hospital's near me, like, you don't know who the doctor will be. It'll be whoever's on call that day. So I was like, no. And it just there's no part of me that was able to relax into it. So I wound up again flirting with the home birth model, and I still registered at 2 hospitals as a backup, but I was like, okay, and then by the end we're going to do this. And by the end of my pregnancy, they're coming to your house to visit you every week anyways. And so and in my case, I was only about, let's say, a 15-minute drive should the need arise that I would need to transfer. So that's kind of how I slid into it. But underneath it all was really this sense of like, this isn't natural. There has to be a better way. There has to be a more supportive way. There has to be a way that puts a woman in charge. There has to be a way I can stay very relaxed in my body without the neon lights and all the things. I want to drop a really big caveat because I know this is important. What I'm really saying is that it's important for the woman to feel in charge, in like she determines what's going on with her body, informed and relaxed. And for a lot of people, that definitely is at a hospital environment. So my best friend's a nurse. She's totally comfortable with the lingo and the people, and she loved the nurses around her. She's not doing it anywhere else. Like, fabulous. So I'm not saying that it should be one way or the other. I'm just saying the main factor was for your body to relax, to gently push this thing out. you know, Maybe not so gently. You have to be able to feel calm and have some kind of sense of control and dignity and modesty and whatever makes you feel safe. So again, I was already kind of a scaredy, anxious, kind of very afraid of birth to begin with type. So I needed to really create that safety for myself. And so that's kind of how I stumbled into it. And then if you talk to other moms at home birth, once you do it once, usually want to do it again. If things, especially if things went okay for you. And so by the time I had the third baby at home, it was like still a very big deal, but it was really a no-brainer for me. Everybody's individual though. I'm saying that because I know we'll get comments on that. Everybody's individual in their own journey. But yeah, I am a huge proponent though for midwifery support, for doula support, for women supporting women, and again, just for women being in charge of what they'd like and what's happening with their body. And there's ways to incorporate that even in those scenarios where things they need a lot of support, they need a lot of intervention. There's still ways to support the woman so that she's feeling safe, even if it's like surgery needs to come into place or whatever. And I could get going on a whole side discussion here, but I won't. But
the truth is really that you say the woman needs to be in charge.
mm-hmm.
And in a hospital environment, she's really not. And I want every young woman who has not delivered any babies just yet, but is thinking about where to go or how to do it. When you go into the hospital, you really give away your responsibility to deliver that baby. That's what I learned doing it twice. And I would never, ever do it again. Because I really believe that the body of the woman, let's say she's a healthy woman, right? No complications, no nothing. It's a healthy pregnancy. Then you will have all the tools in your body already to deliver that baby well. You will be able to do that. And I also think that there is not enough practice, there's not enough information, there's not enough support for women to do that. At least in Germany, where I've done that 2 times now. I cannot say anything about other countries. But for most, I would say, Western countries, they pride themselves of being advocates for women empowerment and what have you. But what I have experienced is that it is the least empowering state and situation that I've been in. And I think we need to change that narrative. And it's
Oh
so
God.
beautiful to hear that it is possible in Canada, because in Germany, I wanted to get a home birth. It was not possible. Even the midwives would go into the hospital with you. Yes, you can book one, right?
Yeah.
But she would go into the hospital with you.
Yeah.
At least in my area, it was not possible to get a home birth.
Yeah.
And they also brainwashed me into believing that because I had a, what have you, complicated pregnancy, which it was not. In the end, I knew, right? But that's also something. Why do they lie to you so much? Why do they give you such false information just to get you into that hospital with which they earn money? That is something we need to talk about because, and we need to bring it to light. Hospitals are a business. Anybody who gives their responsibility into the hands of a doctor gives away the responsibility for their life, literally, and the life of their children. What they have done, almost killing me or the babies that I tried to deliver, should never happen in the 21st century to any woman. And that's why I think it is crucially important that we put women back in charge. If the woman is too weak, let's say, because of the processes of giving birth are too heavy on her, she hopefully has a partner who supports her and who gives direction, or a midwife that she hopefully has the opportunity to book, which again in Germany is being killed off right from the roots. All the midwives are not really able to survive in their jobs because they are taxed so heavily that they really cannot practice anymore. This is being quite literally killed in front of our eyes so that women will not have the opportunity. My daughter will not have the opportunity to book a midwife, which is why I also left Germany because I saw how women are treated there. This is not how you should roll this whole thing, right? And everything really depends on the woman. How you deliver a baby really starts a new life cycle. I personally feel and think that life and babies are so precious and so holy that we need to put more intention into how we bring them into this world and what we actually present them in this world. Doesn't mean that we have to put them in feathers and all soft and what have you. There are challenges in this life, definitely, and we need to teach them. But I love how you put it and how you celebrate this concept of honoring birth. And I would love for you to share more about that.
Oh my God. So much to unpack there. So for the trauma you've experienced, I am deeply witnessing you and seeing you, and thank you for sharing. Um, to say that it boils, boils my blood is an understatement. So I won't go too far down that rabbit hole, but I do agree birth is sacred, and I do agree that you're letting this little life transition in, from the internal world to the external world, right? And all they've known to that point is their mother and the heartbeat of their mother and the fluid of the mother and all the things. And I think that there's a lot of relearning that we need to do around birth and globally. And instead of, modernizing everything to make them, we need to really go backwards. We need to go back to our sages. We need to go back to our elders. We need to go back to the indigenous cultures. We need to go back to look at the work that my great grandmother was doing, to the way my grandmother was born. And obviously nothing is perfect, right? So maybe there's a model where we take the best of both worlds. So here again in Canada, at least in Ontario, I should say, it's different around the sections of my country. We have like birth centers as well, where if you don't want to have a home birth, but you want to have somewhere kind of in between where you can kind of set up and it feels like a home, but there's ambulances either there or standby, it's a bit closer to the hospital. Like that's an option. And one of my really good friends used that place, and she was there with her midwife, and they had a lot of privacy. So that was perfect for her. Another friend made birth sacred was she chose a hospital that was much less busy than the inner city one. So she chose one more on the outskirts. My sister went through 2 cesarean sections and sort of knew that that'd be the case, but so she had her midwife with her, and she had her midwife help her explain what was going on and help give breastfeeding support and just be a really beautiful friend. And same thing. So whether I know people that whatever the situation they're facing, they have like a doula or they have like a midwife or somebody with them. In my country, I think it's still 80-20, maybe like, or maybe it's 85-15. Most women that have midwifery support, and I think it's growing well, they still deliver in a hospital setting. And not as many do the home birth thing. So I think it's growing and I think it's changing. But it is a bit of a slow process. And I know that the midwives need our voices behind them. And this is on Instagram. If you start following doulas and midwives and home birthers, there are women kicking up a storm vocally, and they are putting everything out there and they are changing the conversation. Probably not just Instagram, probably it's on TikTok. And then of course a lot of these videos tend to get graphic, so they get taken down, but regardless, they stay up there for a few days. And seeing videos of other home births or just like a natural birth or like a woman empowered birth, so maybe it is more of a hospital setting where they allow, the tub or the bed or the lights to be dimmed, whatever sort of allows the woman to feel comfortable, music playing, whatever. There's a lot of really, really, really beautiful videos, and it's such a beautiful way to deal with your fear and kind of desensitize you that this is a normal process. And unfortunately, myself included, nobody ever sees birth, nobody ever sees death in our culture, nobody ever sees birth. So we're like, oh my God, like that's gross, or it's taboo, or it's shocking, or I'm going to be too afraid. So I think if we just kind of normalize this a little bit, this is breastfeeding, this is birth, it's like pooping. Okay, it's not like pooping, but you know what I mean? Like it's not such a big deal. So at this one point is the most important deal, but it's not such a big deal because everybody's been doing it for millions of years, right? And then you need information. See, I can already hear, because I've gone through 15 years of arguments or debates. Yes, women in the past and historically would bleed out afterwards, and that's where they died because they'd hemorrhage after the birth and all of these things. Yes, there's things to look for. Yes, your diet's important. Yes, don't take risks. Like that's not really what I'm saying. I'm talking about the whole conversation needs to come back and really be woman-centered, really have a woman's input, really want her body to be in the best shape. Even if she's having intervention, if she feels safe and she's relaxed, her hormonal constitution will be very different, right? The experience of the baby will be less traumatic, right? So it's an incredibly big thing. As much as it's not that big a deal, it's still an incredibly big deal. It's not just another routine medical procedure. And like if I could just help even a handful of women, I think I already have, but another handful of women feel like they left the birth process with their dignity, with their confidence, with their just sense of self intact, then it's worth it. The book I wrote is worth it. This work is worth it. The helping people learn how to breathe along their journeys is worth it. And even all the extra debates and arguments that I have to go through is worth it. And I'll just speak to that really quickly. This was a really hard, like I wrote a book about home birth a few years ago, but this is a really hard one for someone like me even to share because it is so inflammatory. Even with women, because we are very emotionally attached to the most charged things that happen to us, right? So everybody can be very attached, almost protective of their birth story, myself included, right? So you almost have to come at it from a very delicate, neutral lens, if that makes sense. And which is one reason I like focusing on breath work, because you can't really argue with it. You can't argue that it's going to be helpful in any situation you find yourself in, right? Even with diet, you could say, tell the woman to eat more meat, tell her to eat more grains, tell her to drink more water. With this one, we all need to breathe. We all need to find safety and calm. So that's my little contribution, the techniques that I use to get through it. And even when like fear has you by the balls, and like at one point I couldn't even go look in the mirror because I think panic would have just overtaken me. I think I got up just to use the washroom and I was like, no, go back into your meditation. So if I can just share some of those tips and secrets, then great. And it's less controversial than saying where you should do it, or hooked up to what or not. I mean, I have my own personal opinions, obviously. But I try and find the neutral ground so that I can speak to both sides, right? Because again, this is a very inflammatory topic. I've been talking about it for a few years now, and yeah, yeah, everybody has an opinion on women's bodies and what they should do with them. Just yeah.
Yeah, I feel specifically in this instance, you speak about so many different aspects. On one hand, the fact that when you actually are in a hospital and you are delivering the baby there, you maybe you have nurtured your baby for 9 months and you've given it your all and you've tried your best. And what can happen is when you go into the hospital is that it can be ruined in 1 second by just one nurse who is in a rush to finish her shift. And she destroys your entire work of 9 months because she wants to be home at 9. And this is the kind of detailed decision or things that we need to think about when we think about whether to go into the hospital or do home birth or any other option that does not involve someone who is in a rush or who is on a clock. That
No,
is
you
very
can't.
important.
Cannot rush birthing women, people. Are you hearing me? Don't rush them.
Some just do. They just initiate the birth. If they want to be home in 10 minutes, they initiate the birth without the consent of the mother. These things
Woo.
are happening. And
Yeah.
they specifically cannot be charged for that because they let you sign documents, at least in Germany, that you cannot sue them for anything that they do. And then you can't, right? And it's all hidden in a way, the practices that some nurses and some doctors do. And I think we need to bring that to light so that women can really make a better decision and give
Mm.
them the choice that they need.
Mm. You're
And
touching on
as
something, yeah, it's very, very important. You're touching on advocacy, and that's so, so, so important. If you either need to be able to do it for yourself or bring someone with you that can advocate.
And this decision making process is sometimes very hard when the process of giving birth is very, very difficult for you, especially with the first one. You will experience measurable amounts of pain, most probably, even if you are a healthy woman. That's just the natural process of it. And so, even if you have given a document, let's say, where you describe what you want to have, at least that's what I was able to do. And I was like, wow, that sounds like really beautiful. They're asking about me about my favorite music that I want to have on. But what happens in the end is when you give that kind of responsibility into the hospital is that they don't have to follow through. It's just a recommendation, and they will most probably not because they are on the clock. And this is my entire impression. While the medical field might be top notch, so to speak, it is really not paying attention to the human being. It is like a number, like you said. This is the saddest thing that can happen to a woman that puts so much work into these 9 months to give birth to a healthy child and to get it ripped away just by one person is brutal. We should not let that happen to other women. And I am a big advocate now for that. I will not keep my mouth shut. I will talk about it, right? Because protecting women is, as I have observed it in the Western world, is not a man's job anymore. They are feeling that this is not my job. You are emancipated. Do your own thing, lady. And this is a thing that we also need to address, that men have come to a time when they don't feel responsible to protect women anymore. And this is so sad that I, as a woman, have to step up and do men's work. I do it
Mm.
anyway. I'm a single mom. I've learned that in the past 13 years. I will
Mm.
do that type of work. And whenever I
Yeah.
see a man step up again to his plate and do his job that I feel men are born to do, that is their gift that I
Yeah.
truly treasure. Their capability to protect is a gift. Whenever I see someone do that, I will applaud, but I will stand beside him, so to speak, and I will do that job as well. And I think we need more women to lead the way. Unfortunately, it looks like it is again on women to lead the
Mm,
way, to tell the world where we need to head.
absolutely. Well, first of all, thank you for your share and your honesty. Lots of truth saying there, which is refreshing. And you were touching on sacred masculinity, and that's a whole nother beautiful topic. You're touching on sacred femininity and sacred masculinity, and we are all both, right? But in sacred masculinity, absolutely, the chief role of the male is to the three P's: protect, provide, and there's one more for the female, right? Um, and I wonder if it's almost like a society issue versus kind of like an individual issue. It's the sort of the whole society that we are raising our males in. I have a son, he's 10 years old. How do I raise him to, in the current context, stand up and protect the feminine? You know what I mean? On a practical level, these are some beautiful conversations. We should start a Facebook group up and start having them, right? Um, and I think that it is okay for women to bring forward both the feminine and masculine when they need to. I think that the birthing space was always, if you look at the archaeological record, mostly a female zone. All right. I remember my grandmother laughing, and I think I was like, were any men ever there? And she was like, why would you ever want a man to be in the room when you have your pants down looking at you? Like she just couldn't get this idea of why you would be spread eagle in front of a guy that you don't know, right? So obviously it's a different time, right? But I mean, it just didn't it just seemed weird to her. And I know there's exceptions, right? And I'm not saying that there's no rule for a man outside of the father in the birthing space, but I think it is okay for women to take back their leadership of this. And I think it's important for men to do the role of containment, create the container around us, create the space in the system so this is normal, so that at least a woman could have a doula or a midwife or somebody supporting her, advocating on her behalf. And just, even if they're not the one delivering the baby, then the ones making sure that in any way they can, that woman feels safe and provided for and protected, so that she can turn everything off. So it's like, don't worry about your kids, don't worry about the traffic, don't worry about the weather, don't worry about interruptions, don't worry about not understanding questions at the last minute, don't worry about being bullied into taking something that you don't want to take, or getting a procedure or getting snip, whatever, at the last minute. I'm gonna work on the containment, and that's the kind of the sacred male role. And men, you would say, are naturally equipped to do this, but women can too. But either way, I think it's really a society conversation that needs to happen, like a cultural conversation that needs to happen. And for me, it just really boils back to like safety. Where do I feel safe? Where do I feel comfortable? And a lot of the times that means I need to take off the executive functioning. Like if I already have children, I need to be able to plug off, hand all this over to somebody else so that I can just be in my body and just be safe. And I'm so sorry to hear that in other countries, and probably here too, I'm sure this is happening everywhere. I'm so sorry when I hear that these situations are happening where somebody in a rush, or just anybody, is not giving birth the sacredness that it deserves for everybody. That's really, it's really unfortunate. It's really unfortunate. So let's keep having this conversation. you know let's let's keep doing what we can.
My personal impression is even goes even deeper when it comes to treatment like that. Whenever a man is present, a woman is treated differently, and this is
Mm,
something that only single mothers, I assume, can understand. Um, that was a different case for me. There was no man
mm,
present. There was no man around me. So I think that this is also one of the reasons why the nurse dismissed me entirely, why she wanted to just get home, right, quickly. That's just a single mom. She will either way raise whatever kid, a spoiled brat probably, or a useless kid, or a criminal, or all the prejudices about single moms. And this is not just the single incident. This is an entire collection of experiences that I've had in the past 13 years being a single
Wow.
mom, because my experience before I was a single mom was entirely different. How I was treated.
Mm.
And this is
Mm.
the observation that I've made, how single mothers are being perceived in
Mhm.
society, and
Mhm.
how they are being robbed of the opportunity to
Mhm.
deliver healthy babies, to be
Mhm.
treated properly, and are robbed of the opportunity to heal. And this
Good point.
creates a massive disruption in the life of a woman, of a single
Mhm.
mother, let's say. And there are so
Mhm.
many, and the numbers are growing exponentially
Mhm.
every year,
Yeah.
right? How many women have to go through that alone? And I think we also need to address
Yeah.
that the misconception that you need to have, on the one hand, that you need to have a man to be
Mhm.
treated well, and on the
That's,
other hand, the concept that a man is responsible for your protection. Like, it goes
mhm.
both ways. And I
Yeah.
think we need to make sure that we provide the same opportunities to all women.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I'm a
Yeah.
big advocate for my single women here who are listening to this podcast. I will always stand behind your back, because
Um,
nobody is. You are going through this completely alone. The level of stress that you are going through on a daily basis is immeasurable. You have no one to share that stress with. And
yeah.
you are dealing with things that would normally be divided in two, but yet your shoulders have to carry it alone. So I'm very passionate about that, to provide healing opportunities even for single moms. And your worth is not tied to a man. Your worth is not tied to anything but the simple fact that you are a woman. You are holy as a woman, no matter who is behind, beside, before, or under you, right? It doesn't really matter. Your worth is always the same. And I want every woman to understand that. No matter, is she married, is she alone, is she a single mom? I
Mm.
cherish women so much because I grew up in a small village in Asia where women were really treasured, until I experienced the exact opposite in Germany. So that I want to bring forth the support of women. I want to preserve the sacredness of a woman, because we are talking about self-healing journeys that you work so much in your profession. It requires a lot of vulnerability. Me 10 years ago would have not been able to talk like that because I was in a victim state.
Mm.
100%. I felt like I was the victim, and everybody else, it was everybody else's fault but mine, that I was in whatever situation, whatever happened to my life, right? And I think we need to talk about vulnerability on a different level, where we
Yeah.
allow certain things to be said, even though I could face a lot of hateful comments or what have you, right? I don't care. This is me. If you don't like it, keep scrolling, right? So let's talk about vulnerability and what kind of level of vulnerability is required for a
Oh,
self healing journey. When you don't give away your responsibility for your health, but you actually take it into your hands and you are fully committed to healing.
wow. What level of vulnerability is required for self-healing? So I think the first thing I need to really be clear about is that we're all on a journey. And whether your journey is you're at the physical level, whether your journey is you're at the emotional level, and maybe you are and maybe simultaneously you're working at the spiritual level. So a lot of people that work with me tend to be sort of just kind of up leveling or going into their spiritual side a bit more. Um, it doesn't really matter. You have to be able to flirt and dance with vulnerability, and it will be different for everybody. So I can give you an example of myself. My family of origin, lots of kids, 5 kids, busy parents, dad working all the time, not a lot of time to have one-on-one or be seen, right? So for a lot of reasons, being seen, and not just sort of brushing off a compliment, or heaven forbid crying in front of somebody, or whatever, was a big one for me. So for me, being able to be vulnerable on my own, which takes self-awareness, but then be able to be vulnerable in front of others, um and not just like stuffing the tears down, like letting people see you authentically in whatever's going on, um, is crucial. It's so crucial. And it's crucial in the home birth world, especially because you have to be willing to be vulnerable enough. Well, for starters, with your physical body to a certain extent, but to be willing to be vulnerable and say what your fears are and what you want and what your needs are, and to not hand that power away to somebody else. You have to be able to say, hey, I'm afraid of this. In my case, I know that if I'm really anxious and freaked out, I'm not going to have the power for confrontation. I would be someone that would be more likely to be like, okay, I'll lose my voice around those in authority. So I want someone there who's a badass advocate, male or female at that time, to just in case, to be a bodyguard at the door, right? Um, so you have to be willing to get vulnerable so that you can get honest, so that people can help you along your journey. But what do we need, Ella, to get vulnerable? You need self-awareness. So that's where I always start with people that I work with. And again, I'm on my own journey too. If we can't even slow down long enough to pause, become self-aware, to notice I am anxious as shit. I am angry. I do have trauma in there. I am worried about this. Oh, I don't know how, all those things. We can't even pause. It's kind of hard to tap into the vulnerability, let alone ask for the need to be met, right? So I find it's almost like a continuum. We start with self-awareness. We try to get honest on the inside about where do I need a little support, what needs some work, what is my biggest vulnerability, and then we build up those muscles so that we can speak it out loud or write it out loud, or and actually get the support that we need to do something about it. I also like to substitute the word vulnerability with shadow. All right, let's say our shadow side is not a bad side. It's all the things that we don't want other people to see, or maybe ourselves. So it could be that you always wanted to be a piano player and it was your dream and you love playing piano, but it doesn't make a living, so you put it over here, right? So it could just be that that's part of your shadow. It's still in your vibration. Someone with a little clairvoyance, like me, for example, might be able to pick up on that. Hey, are you a piano player? No, but I always wanted to be. So our vulnerability is usually what we feel, that we put it over there in the corner. We don't want to look at it, right? But you are going to be carrying that around like a backpack. And like I said, some people can even pick up on it until you're willing to put it down and welcome it out, right? And that's like one of the final frontiers of being human. Once we are all good with the positive things that no longer need healing in our life, we need to sort of take some time as appropriate to, what am I vulnerable around? And then I'm going to practice being seen, and I'm going to practice normalizing that. And we're all at different stages, like I bawled my face off yesterday with a group of 4 or 5 supportive women. I don't even really know some of them, like the whole 9 yards. I was so tempted to turn my camera off, and I was like, no, I'm going to let myself be seen, right? But it took me a while to get there. I wasn't fake. Like, I'm just gonna let these feelings be shown publicly, and I know for some that would be a massive stretch, and I'm not saying you need to go start crying in front of people, but practice being vulnerable, um So maybe whatever, it's with your artwork, with your poetry, with your music, or just something that makes you feel vulnerable, kind of builds up the muscle. And on your self-healing journey, usually that is the shadow, usually that is the place that needs to come forward, right? So there's not really a way around it. Just, you got to come to terms with it.
Now, what I also think is that we are oftentimes so scared about letting things be seen that we feel like don't belong into the light.
Mm-hmm.
We focus so much on the reaction of other people.
Yeah, of
What
course.
will they say? How will they react about that, right? When the actual fear is self-based. I think we fear it much more how we will react once we let it out. Because it can
Mm-hmm.
go both ways. We will either love it, that we now have put it on the table into the light, or we will, did I say hate it or love it? Yeah, both. It can go both ways. We will either love it or we will hate it, right?
Yeah.
And that is something that, for example, if you take the piano player example, I don't know why you brought it up because that was me. Um, okay. Ah. So whenever you put it out into the light, right, and you say, I want to be a piano player, you could either realize by hearing your own self speaking about it in such a tremendous way that it is in the light now, that you realize that you don't actually want to be a piano player all of a sudden. You will actually, by releasing it into the world or into the light, realize whether it is your purpose or not. And I think this is a tremendous chance of seeing vulnerability from a different perspective, to not be
Absolutely.
afraid of it so much. And another thing is also that's much more important than what people will say about whatever you put out into the light is what you think about it. Like,
Yes.
I don't really care what other people think about how I look, what I do, how I do it, right? It's a much more important question how I think about myself. Am I proud of myself that I did this? Am I proud of
I agree.
myself that I look this way, right? And what am I achieving with this? What I'm doing, how I present myself? Is this what I want to do, right? And so many people are, and this is even worse nowadays with social media. Like we have been of that generation who grew up without devices, right, until we were like, I don't know, 15, 16. And then it all
Mhm.
started with computers and handy and mobile phones and all that stuff. um, and I think it's really, really hard for people to calm down and to really look inward and find
Yes.
those answers that they don't even know that they have questions to. And this is
Absolutely.
why your work is so tremendously important, because you catch them right where they are in the movement, and then you
Yeah.
calm them down, you sit them down, and you let them just pause and you let them just get
Yeah.
into themselves, into the soul, and really ask really
Mm-hmm.
important questions and answer them,
Yeah.
find those answers. And what I also find so important is the community, because like you
Mm.
can roll as a lonely wolf only for so long and you will be capped at a certain level. That's what I
Yeah.
found. I'm a lonely
Yeah.
wolf, always been the
Yeah, me
alien
too.
that is always alone, so to speak, because I don't belong anywhere, so to speak. But actually, when you go out and you let go of fear that you're the
Mhm.
only one in this world, nobody else will understand you, and that
Yes.
happens to a lot of teens and young adults, right, that they have that type of mentality. When you actually ask the question, not whether you will find people like you who could love you as you are, but how
Yes.
many. Like
How
that is a
many?
that is an exciting journey to like go on,
Yes,
right?
sister. Yes, sacred sisterhood. Absolutely. Absolutely. Um, same as you. I was like the lone wolf. I think a lot of it was, sort of fear based. Um, and like feeling like I needed to be the one being the helper, not allowing myself to be seen and help. So again, that's why I am working a lot with vulnerability. And of course we always teach the thing that we need, right? So when you mentioned this, the modern world, getting people to kind of slow down, unplug, and go inward for even 5 minutes. I think people see it even as a gift, even like a little, we do yoga in the park, me and some of my students, and even like that 3 minutes of meditation, and I'm connecting with the earth, the sunlight's on my face, somebody's holding that space and reminding me to do it for 3 minutes. It's so much nourishment. It's so much medicine. It's not complicated, but why aren't we all doing it? And even me, I have to be very strict about it. Like, why aren't we all doing it? We're in such almost like a sped up frenzy of life nowadays. So we really need to see the whole returning back to like easier days, easier times, more natural way of living. And what I love about the work that I do is that it lets people feel good, like so fast. Like it lets them feel better, like so fast. I'm like no nonsense. I don't like to I'm impatient. Like I like things that work fast and are effective and easy and all the logical stuff, right? So this is like you can change your whole state in 5 minutes. And if you're doubting if you're doubting about like the spiritual path and what that's about, and is energy really a real thing, but you're not doubting me to challenge me, but if you're doubting but you're open, I can show you. But even better is I love showing people that it's in them. Like don't ask me. You go into your own heart. What is in there that needs healing? What is the first thing coming up? Learn to trust that. Do the same thing that I've already been doing. Um, I, let's empower each other. Right? It's not a big deal to learn to go inwards and find the answers and let your, as you said earlier, like start to trust your intuition a little bit. But someone like me just comes along and kind of gives you a framework, but before long you can sort of be off and running. We just need a little community reminder, a little push, like you can do it too, sister, like that kind of feeling sometimes, that little booster, right? And I guess that answers your question of why is community important. It's so important. When you get in a community of sisterhood, especially, you're like, oh, somewhere I already knew that. I just forgot, right? There's nothing that special about me or you or anybody else, right? It's just we need to stay connected to kind of remind each other of the basic truths, and that we're the same. You're not alone. You're not crazy. You're not less valuable than me. I'm not more valuable than you. Yeah, there you have it.
And that is so, that is not at all supported. My observation is that there's a lot of competition between women, which is also very close to my heart, to kind of
Yeah,
bring more attention to ways to be with other women that is not competitive.
yeah,
Because competition, again, is, I feel, something for men. They thrive on competition. They learn, they become really better at competition without
yeah,
becoming emotional about it. But when
yeah.
women start to compete with each other, they really
Mm-hmm.
destroy not only the relationship they have with that woman, but
Mm-hmm.
they really
Yeah,
destroy the relationship they have with themselves. Because
yes,
whatever you try to compete against in another woman, you internally compete with yourself. And you
yes,
kind of, you break down the ground on which you're standing as a woman. And I think the moment that you switch your mindset into, it's not about competition, it's not about who is better, it's not about who is earning more money, all of that doesn't really matter in the moment when you decide to actually grow. And I think
yeah,
this is a difference between these women who have a competitive mindset compared to a growth oriented mindset. When
yeah,
you're competing, you want to strip away either
yes.
yourself or the other person. But when you
Yes.
have a growth mindset and you genuinely want other people to grow,
Mm-hmm.
you add something to the
Absolutely.
space, right?
Yeah.
And by adding something into the space, you make it, you multiply it.
And I think
And
you stop fighting against your own nature too, right? Because we are naturally connectors.
yes, and we are nurturers and we want to take care of others. And I feel there's also an underlying fear, especially in the business space. That's kind of what I'm getting on social media. There is such an unpleasant feel to certain spaces and women that I get, that it's not very comfortable. I don't feel safe in those spaces where women go head to head and toe to toe with each other, right? Where I don't feel it is about the human nature
Mm,
anymore, right? Where it
yeah,
is about showing off things that we have or don't have, right? Or
yeah,
cry about what we don't have.
yeah.
Like, both things will not really help you in your self-healing journey.
Mhm. You're right. These are very, very important topics, and I thank you for bringing them up. And I think in terms of competition, it's for me anyways, like it's just important to try and stay in your own lane, stay in your own lane, not compare yourself too much, not worry so much if someone's trying to compete with you. That's a process, isn't it? But I think eventually when women start to have these conversations and they realize that together we rise, like we can lift each other up so much more. And on a spiritual level, like if you were talking to, like, say, like a shaman or an elder, what I celebrate in you, I'm really celebrating in me. And so at the beginning of my spiritual journey, and a lot of people are like, what? That doesn't make sense. But it will with time when you start to practice it. So what I celebrate in you, and all you have such beautiful long hair. You look very beautiful today. Like, so for example, I'm also celebrating that in me, right? Because we are one and the same, we're part of the same fabric, so to speak. And so it's more in line with our nature to sort of celebrate and try to lift each other, and then we all get a piece of this beautiful pie instead of pushing the other down, right? Like, so that I can get up. That doesn't actually, like you said, it won't actually bring healing or happiness to you. It might bring you more money temporarily, but it's not actually going to give you a light vibration where you're feeling good about yourself. Like, you know what I mean? So you're kind of chewing off your own foot by doing that anyways. And but I think it's a journey and it takes practice. And a lot of us are wounded, and a lot of us didn't grow up in these kind of communities and with that kind of energy and that kind of support. And, luckily I am surrounded by some just incredibly open-minded, giving sisters who remind me of these things and remind me not to go down the competitive road, and unless it's playful, right? But that's back to community again, right?